Hey, this is the one-man gold mine, the one-man enterprise of professional wrestling and all entertainment, Flynn Hendricks. And you better believe when I'm looking for a good podcast to listen to, I go to my own. I go to the I Know You Hear Me podcast hosted by me, Flynn Hendricks. That is such a fresh perspective for how you should look at life, too. I love that. And then when I'm feeling spooky, I go to my other podcast, Tales from the Haunt, where I want my head shoved inside a 15-pound silicone mask more. I want to have a bucket of sweat coming off me at the end of the night than just Jeff.
Dogs don't lay eggs, Flynn.
I hate you so much.
Talk to other scare actors about what it takes to get into the world of scare acting. So if you're curious about how people became professional wrestlers, actors, prioritized their mental health, became entrepreneurs, avoided burnout, or got into scare acting, you need to go check out I Know You Hear Me and Tales from the Haunt, available on all podcasting platforms. And I know you hear me.
Wrestling fans, promoters, wrestlers, and anyone who enjoys pro wrestling now have something new to be excited about. The Wrestling Fans International Association, the WFIA, is back. WFIA is an association that exists to promote, grow, and support professional wrestling throughout the world. Membership is free. Your membership includes a free digital bi-monthly publication of the Wrestling Fan News newsletter, association updates, voting privileges, and much more. Please go to thewfia.org, that's THEWFIA.org, and become a member today.
Available on all streaming platforms. It's professional wrestling's greatest, largest, privately owned wrestling library. All the classic hits, flips, slams, and pins of yesteryear are on one place. It's Ultimate Classic Wrestling. Check out the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Mr. USA Tony Atlas, Tito Santana, Rick Martel, a who's who of professional wrestling's greatest spotlight stars ever to grace the squared circle, all in one place. Grab the best seat in the house for memories and mayhem on Ultimate Classic Wrestling.
Welcome to the PWZ podcast. I am Rick Del Santo, and joining me today is, all the way from the UK, Jonny Rose. What's going on?
All good here. Nice to be here. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm glad to talk to you. Over the last couple months, we've been speaking quite a bit back and forth online, and met you through the IWCCW group, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've been talking a lot about the history of professional wrestling, discovering that you are yourself wrestle out there. So I want to know about your career before we get into anything else, and how you got into professional wrestling and interested in that as a kid. Because how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
44, very nearly 44.
Okay. Well, so you kind of grew up in the same era that I grew up in. So, and what was that like growing up for wrestling over there?
The exposure to wrestling for me as a child was pretty limited, really. We only kind of, unless you had the big cable systems or whatever, which, we could never afford when I was young.
Right. Yeah.
There was just one sort of hour of wrestling on a Saturday afternoon, which was the British wrestling. But that came off TV in 1988. So, I kind of became a fan in maybe 86, the end of 86, when I first sort of witnessed the TV. And then they pulled that from TV in 88. So we had a little bit of a dry spell. And then I noticed that it was on late at night. WWF was like an hour of their syndicated television, very late at night. So I used to, video record that because it was on at like 3 a.m. or something. And then watch that the next day. That was the only day I'd ever get up early for school, so I could watch that first. Then after that, my exposure to wrestling became a lot more. The first live show I ever went to was a British wrestling show, Dale Martin Promotions. the promoter there, the Crabtree family.
Okay.
Max Crabtree died last week, bless him, 90 years old.
Oh,
So
wow.
God rest him, because without him, I wouldn't be a fan, really. Without him and his promotion. Yeah, so that was the first live show I ever went to in 1987. And to be honest, my granddad took me. My grandfather took me to the live show because he knew I'd watched it on television and knew I'd loved it on television. And when I got there, I hated it. I was crying and I just wanted to get out of the building. To me, it was just like big men punching each other and, hearing that skin on skin sort of forearms and stuff. It really scared me. I was 8 years old and I just wanted to get out of there. And during the interval, halfway through, I was like, "Can we go, Grandad?" And he said, "No, I've paid for you to be here, and we're watching the rest of it." And then the next match was a big tag match with Big Daddy in, and he was Britain's Hulk Hogan. I mean, he didn't look like Hulk Hogan. Don't get me wrong; he was just a normal, everyday looking fat man. 350, 400 pounds, sort of, just a normal, everyday fat man. But I think that was part of the attraction. He was a normal human being that people could relate to. The everyday sort of, very much like the WWF Dusty Rhodes kind of gimmick. The normal man.
Right. Yep.
And yeah, he was in a tag match, and the minute he came through the door into the venue, and it was packed. It was like a leisure centre, big, probably 600 people in there, and all the kids rushed up to him, and it was that got me. It wasn't the wrestling that got me. It was that charisma and that sort of attraction, and how the wrestlers could play with people's emotions, that got me. And after that, I was hooked. Yeah, and that was it from there. Been addicted ever since.
Yeah, I guess I have a similar story, but I guess I first saw Roddy Piper on TV. That was my very first. But then I think that when I saw Hulk Hogan, I pretty much became addicted as well in the early '80s. But as I got older, I started discovering different stuff. Go ahead, sorry.
People always knock, like over here, they knock Big Daddy because he wasn't the greatest of wrestlers, and they knock Hulk Hogan because he didn't have a million moves. But they were the people that drew the money. They were the ones that put the backsides on seats.
Right.
For all the other great matches that could have been before and after them, it was them that people came to see. And you can't deny that talent isn't necessarily, I mean, to have that charisma is a talent, right? It's not necessarily a physical sort of athletic talent, but they were the ones that drew the money. Much as Ricky Steamboat and Macho Man was the best match of WrestleMania 3, it was Andre and Hogan that drew the people, right?
If you ever go back and watch that match, it's full of emotion. The Hogan Andre match, it's an incredible match. So there's professional wrestling is a very interesting place where emotion it plays into it as well, not just necessarily the athletic ability in a way.
Wrestling is about emotion. I think it's, sure, it's got to have some athletic prowess to it, right, but that's almost like a 20% portion. Mm-hmm. It's big on look, and it's big on the emotional side of things.
Right. So what ended up making you decide that this is what you wanted to do, become a professional wrestler?
Right. I got a job on a holiday village where people go and sort of have vacations. Mm-hmm. And once a week there, they had wrestling on, through the summer season. So people that went there for their vacation could have entertainment, and there was all sorts, there's comedians and singers and all this. And there was wrestling there every Tuesday afternoon. And I went there to watch it every Tuesday afternoon. Well, I'd work the morning, and then I'd finish about 12:30, and the wrestling show was 2:00, so it's perfectly timed. Just an hour of wrestling, 2 matches, like one match and then a little interval and then another match. And after about 3 weeks, it was the same 4 wrestlers doing the same 4 things, because it was a different crowd every week. They go there for a week's holiday,
right?
So they could do the same thing every week. And I thought to myself, well, he lost in that way last week. Why did he fall for it again this week? And the next match will be, oh no, well, he did that last week and it didn't work then. So what is he doing it for now? And then it kind of twigged in my head. I was 18 by this point, and it only just twigged in my head that maybe this isn't quite on the up and up like it, like I might have thought it was. But I was really small child. I was 9 stone. It's 14 pounds in stone, so there's not a lot of weight on me. So I didn't really think I could be involved in wrestling because I just wasn't big enough, By this point, it's 1997, so that sort of big attitude era kind of thing, right? Around that period, a lot of big fellas, and the little fellas were all doing the athletic stuff, the light heavyweight stuff, which I knew I wasn't an athletic kid. So I thought maybe refereeing or something. But I was put in touch with a training school, which was maybe 40 miles from where I lived. So every Sunday I'd go there to train. And the person that was doing the training was a referee for a promotion that was sort of national. So he kind of took me under his wing, and he would take me to places with him, just so I could see, really, just so I could be there and sort of not necessarily learn on the job because I wasn't doing the wrestling, but I'd be around the people and sort of take it in, soak it in. And there was a guy called Johnny Kidd who wrestled as himself, and he also wrestled as Spider-Man in a Spider-Man outfit. And then come the Royal Rumble at the end of the show, obviously it couldn't be 2 people in the Rumble, unless there's a very quick change, but it was only a little Rumble kind of thing. So they had to find somebody about the same size as Johnny Kidd to fit in the Spider-Man outfit. And that's where I came in. So my very early matches, I was Spider-Man, just doing the Rumbles. And then it just kind of progressed from there. I was terrible, don't get me wrong, I was really bad, but every time I'd do it, I'd learn more. And there were established wrestlers in those Rumbles who would always give me advice afterwards and show me little things afterwards. And then it progressed from there into real matches, and away we go. I did referee a little bit first for some sort of small time independent shows, and I'd ring announced a little bit. But yeah, that's the actual in ring part, was me as Spider-Man. I wouldn't fit in that suit now, I tell you.
What was it like? What was your experiences like, and how did you feel in those earliest days? Like, were you excited or just nervous?
Really, really scared. No, not at all excited, because the nerves took over. These were wrestlers that I saw as a kid. Yep. Established, big, on the British scene at least, big name wrestlers. Mm-hmm. And very, very scary, because much as I worked out that it wasn't the most kosher of sports, I also knew that you had to be tough to do it. And I wasn't a tough kid. Nothing sporty about me in any way. It was something that was sort of drummed into me afterwards, and I had to toughen myself up a bit. And just so scared, really scared. But, on the whole, they treated me all right. I was really lucky, but I think I was lucky because I'd been around them first. So they knew who I was, and they knew that I was a trainee of John, the referee. So they treated me a little bit better than they might have. So I was kind of lucky on that front.
You mentioned that some of these guys were, I guess, legends that you worked with, but is there anybody that we know over here? Like anybody that were bigger names Paige's over here?
Paige's dad, Ricky Knight, was one of them.
Okay. Oh yeah, Ricky Knight, right? Correct.
Yeah. Always been lovely to me. At the time, these shows were doing good houses, really big houses. Mm-hmm. They were like look-alike shows, sort of tribute to the WWF kind of things. So they'd have Ricky Knight had the shoulder spikes and the face paint on, and he was one of the LOD people. And it maybe teamed sometime with another guy called Johnny South, who was another big British name. Drew McDonald was on a few that was a very well-respected man. Klondike Jake was the promoter, but he, all, 90% of them were well-established British names. And very, very scary humans to be around. Tarantula was, I'd seen him a lot as a kid, and he had sort of this Mohican hair and big sort of bushy goatee beard and tattoos of tarantulas all over him, and one of the scariest humans I could ever, I'd ever seen. But luckily, I saw him yesterday. I went to a reunion of old wrestlers yesterday, and he's a lovely man, lovely man. But back then, I wouldn't go near him. Scared me to death.
What was I going to say here? How much is, like, I know that we've spoken quite a bit, and I know that you're a huge fan of, like, the Southern wrestling from the United States. How much has that played an influence as to your style and how you wrestle, and I guess in your booking and stuff like that?
Now it's a huge influence. I've gone through, this is my 25th year, and I've gone through sort of phases of both my style and my booking style of when I promoted. Originally, I was all about the British wrestling, but by then, British wrestling was kind of done. It was the rounds and the 2-4s and all this kind of thing. It wasn't what people wanted to see. It wasn't what kids wanted to see, because they didn't know what it was. And it's not their fault, and it's not our fault. It's no one's fault. It's just how things were. They were getting the WWF on television, and that's what they wanted to see. So I had to kind of reevaluate. Right, that's not going to work. The Southern thing really came in when I first went to Kentucky, which was 2004.
Okay.
And I learned a lot about that style being there. The promoter had a huge collection of Smoky Mountain videotapes that we sat and watched, and that changed my life, to be fair. It gave me another avenue. I'd seen little bits and bobs of Smoky Mountain, and little bits of Memphis, and that kind of thing, but never really studied it. It was just a match here or a match there that I'd seen. But then, that changed everything for me, because it was a totally new world, and it was one that had everything for me. It had the charisma, and it had the gimmicks, and it had the story, and it had the wrestling itself. To me, that sort of Southern style was a combination of everything that I loved about wrestling all in one place. Like a lot of places, it's all charisma, or it's all wrestling, or it's all the look, and this was everything all in one place. And then I got to travel with Tracy Smothers when he came over here on his UK tours. He stayed with me, and we travelled together. He'd done that 4 or 5 times on his trips here, and that was such an education, especially on that style, because that was his thing. Brilliant. I can't thank Tracy enough for what he taught me, and my trips to Kentucky, and those two things really sort of pushed me to want to be more. So I'm the last. I know we're in England, but I'm the last Southern Territory left.
What's the what did you come over here for? Who did you work for when you came over to Kentucky? How many trips have you made over to the United States?
5 to America.
Okay.
The first was in 2002 to Pennsylvania.
Okay. And
I was very, very green at the time. I'd done 3 or 4 years, but it was 3 or 4 years very much doing the same sort of thing over and over. So I didn't have that, vast range. It was just doing the same thing every day.
Right.
And I don't mind admitting it, I was out my depth. I was out my league. I didn't have that look, that sort of. It's very different in Pennsylvania, because they're a tough old crowd up there.
Very.
It's a look that I didn't have. I was a pale, relatively skinny English kid. I didn't have the knowledge. I didn't have the ability. I was just out my depth. And then I had a chance 2 years later to go to Kentucky. That was I run HCW now, and it was HCW that I went for then, and that's how we got the name. Because until then, I was promoting bits and bobs, but I didn't really have a name for the company. It was just putting on wrestling shows, and it's because of that. Then we became HCW UK sort of thing. And
was that was that Heartland Wrestling? Is that what that was?
No. That
okay.
was Ned Thatcher, wasn't it? Heartland.
Okay. Yeah.
Daryl Fugit, very became a very good friend of mine. He has. Wrestled as Showtime Sean Christopher.
Okay.
Around Somerset, Kentucky was the area he's from. Yeah, and we just became the sort of the sister company to them, just because I wanted a name for the promotion, no other reason. But that Kentucky thing was far more my style. Again, I went in blind. I didn't know at all what the system was. He sent me a tape of their TV, their sort of regional television, and it was far more my cup of tea. You know, a lot more crowd work than in-ring work, and just a steadier pace that's just based on emotion rather than action. And I love my time there. I've done several trips for them, and they've been here too, which is pretty cool. Yeah, good. I love the air. Kentucky's beautiful.
Yeah,
such a nice place, and the people are lovely. And we got treated very well by everybody every time we went. So yeah, love it.
Outside of Pennsylvania, have you ever been into the northeastern part of the United States, like New England, outside of Pennsylvania?
No, well, not for wrestling. No, we flew to New York and all the rest of it, but you know, not for wrestling. It was Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, where the Groundhog Day film was.
Yeah.
It was the first trip I went. It only happened once though, which I thought was odd. Jim Duggan was on that, which was cool. You know, learning experience just to be around him, and he was very nice. He had a big respect for the English wrestling too. He was asking about English wrestlers that he knew. You know, he knew of Pete Roberts. You know, I'm guessing from Japan, and Johnny Saint, which is, in my opinion, the greatest actual wrestler that I've ever seen. You know, like a world lightweight champion.
Right.
You know, absolute master in the ring. But yeah, Jim Duggan asked about Johnny Saint, which sort of took me back a little bit, because I was thinking, you know, two very different styles, and how would Jim Duggan know about Johnny Saint? But you know, it just goes to show that the British wrestlers' names, you know, big names like that, get all over the world, and they've got quite a good reputation.
There's certain guys that kind of, their names did get out here. You know what I mean? Guys like Billy Robinson and obviously Steven Regal and stuff like that. Certain guys, if I may say, you know what I mean? They had a certain kind of success over here, or through videotapes and stuff like that. And what's your opinion on?
At the time, Johnny Saint had never been to America or anything. He went later on for Chikara, but that was towards the end of his wrestling days.
Yeah, I think him and Dave Taylor teamed up together, I believe, for a Chikara show. Yeah. I remember. I saw that event. Did you appreciate Chikara at all? I know it's such a random question now that it was brought up. I thought I'd ask.
It's odd because I don't like modern wrestling, but
yeah,
I kind of like that to like parts of that. You know, I like. You know, they've had your wrestling matches, and I do like wrestling matches. You know, like Johnny Saint style wrestling matches. People like, you know, your Chris Heroes and your Colt Cabana types that do the wrestling. You know, I really like that. Some of it's a bit wacky, you know.
Yeah.
Throwing invisible bombs at each other. Maybe I could do without that, but you know, I like the wrestling. Quackenbush is brilliant.
He is.
Quackenbush is very much European style. And I like that.
Yeah, I always appreciated that company for. I mean, I still watch wrestling some 40 years later. But I understand there's not a whole lot that I still like about it. So I guess we're kind of in the same boat. But for some reason, I just can't turn that TV off all the time. So
no, yeah. I read things sometimes, and it's because of reading things that I think I need to look at this. You know, even if I hate it, I need to make it my own opinion. I can't just go on everybody else's opinion. So, you know, like I've looked up bits of the Hall of Fame, but after I've read about pieces, and you know, it's not something that I'll sit and watch the whole thing, but I'd certainly have a look at little bits and bobs, and I've dabbled a little bit over the last day or two.
I know that. I think that we were discussing, you didn't even know that, you know, WrestleMania was this weekend. And I'd have to say that when did you really kind of disconnect from that? I mean, which I totally understand, because there's times where I just stop watching wrestling for months or a year or two at a time. So
it's really difficult to pinpoint a time where it stopped being must-see viewing.
Yeah.
But the last big thing I remember really was the whole WCW, ECW invasion period, which I really enjoyed. What was that? 2001, 2?
2002, I believe, because WCW was bought 2001, and then it took them months for those guys to come in. And I don't think that storyline gets enough credit. You know what I mean? I think a lot of it's shit on because they show that they buried WCW basically in the storyline. But I think that it just doesn't get enough credit. There's some really good stuff in there, I believe.
It could have been done a lot differently and a lot better, in my opinion. But that's hindsight, right? You can't do anything about that now. But I really enjoyed it at the time. The Survivor Series pay-per-view and the Invasion pay-per-view were brilliant. The only thing that fascinated me a little bit that I think was a bit odd was the fact that most of the WCW/ECW team were actually WWE people.
Yeah.
When you think about it that way. But I think that's just Vince wanting the control, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it was very strange. Very, very strange. But so you didn't watch WrestleMania this weekend?
No. I will have a little look, like I do everything. I will, little bits and bobs. And if I read that something with a particular standout, I'll have a look.
I was pleasantly surprised and thought that it was a really great show, like both days.
I've read Facebook, people put it on Facebook today, and they've said nothing bad about it.
Yeah, there was a couple moments.
Like it. I don't disrespect anyone being there. It's got its market, it's got its place. It's just not for me. It's changed a lot, but it's got its market, and hats off to everybody there, and they do a great job, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few moments that I could sit there and complain about. But I said that we went live last night, and I said that. But like I said, I thought overall it was good. Probably the best Mania I've actually witnessed in many years, like from start to finish. So that's, I guess, I'm very critical when it comes to watching WWE because I usually fast forward through everything. So so I guess that's saying something.
I catch little, we run a bar, so we do a lot of sort of late nights, but on TV here they have like an hour of raw highlights that's on at stupid o'clock in the morning, and sometimes it just fits in when we finish work.
Yep.
So if I catch that, the highlights are good because I don't have to sit there through what seems like a lifetime of television. I can get it all in 45 minutes, an hour. So I catch that now and again. AEW is the same. That's on late at night, maybe not that late, about 11ish. But we catch the sort of the latter end of that sometimes, and that's a little bit too flippy for me, though.
Absolutely, they've got some really good talent there, but the last episode I watched, I thought was better than what I've seen because I stopped watching it for about a good 4 months. Because of a lot of the flippy dippy stuff, but I watched last Wednesday and I thought that it was actually a pretty good show compared to why I stopped watching it. Really,
I found it does you good if you don't see it for a while, because it becomes new again and it sort of sets a little spark off. I mean, even if it's not as great as you remember from your youth, at least there's something there that reminds you why you like this kind of thing. Missing it for a while does you good. But the thing with the AEW stuff, for me, the idea of wrestling is one person against another person, and the idea of that is to make contact with them in some fashion so you can get their shoulders to the mat or make them give up in some way. Right? That's the idea for me, and it's a pretty basic term and it's pretty sort of standard idea. But I'm old school. That's as simple as that. Get them down on the floor so you get the shoulders to the mat. As simple as that. Whereas what I tend to see in AEW is one person leapfrogs another one, then the other one throws a kick that they miss because the other guy ducks. Then there's some rolls between some legs and under some arms. And then they sort of go over each other in the corner. And this is 3 minutes of match I've seen so far. And a lot of action, but no one's actually touched anybody yet. Yep. Very much like a video game. There's no actual connection of body parts at all in any way. It just defeats the object to me. It just loses that, what it's all about.
I'm very much a traditionalist when it comes to professional wrestling, like the traditional style of wrestling. I love just two guys going at it. I don't like 3-way matches or 4-way matches or 6-way scrambles or all that flippy dippy tables, ladders, chairs, and all that kind of stuff. So AEW is not necessarily my cup of tea, but there are certain guys that I will sit there and tune in for, so there's that.
Yeah, I couldn't name you more than 4 people there, to be
honest. So let's see. What do you think of what was your favorite territory outside of the ones in the United States? I know we talked a little bit about Smoky Mountain. You mentioned USWA to me off.
It has to be anything that way, anything sort of that direction. So yeah, Memphis, which became CWA, which became USWA. Dallas, I'm quite the fan of Dallas.
Yeah.
Of any description, really, world class. Then it was USWA after that, wasn't it, when it shared the time with Memphis. Global, I don't mind Global because it's Dallas. It's a bit of a watered down version of Dallas wrestling, but I think it was still pretty good.
I think so. Yeah.
Smoky Mountain, obviously. Florida, I could watch Florida all day.
Yeah.
That was another one that had a bit of everything. It had its wrestling, it had its characters. I mean, your Kevin Sullivan kind of characters, which Kevin Sullivan and Purple Haze and all this kind of gothic, dark, evil stuff going on. And then you've got actual wrestlers. After speaking to Kevin Sullivan doing a promo for 5 minutes, you have Les Thornton doing some wrestling. So it's a right mixed bag. It's a buffet of wrestling.
Yeah. That was the Maniac Mark Lewin as the Prince of Darkness, or the Purple Haze, excuse me, who was man, I remember reading as a youngster about Mark Lewin. This was way before I ever got to witness him and his heel turn and becoming the Purple Haze. And I eventually saw Mark Lewin in World Class as a heel. He was much older at that time period. He came out in white sweatpants and wrestled. So, I grew an appreciation for him, though.
Yeah. I've seen him in New Zealand as a big baby face.
Really?
You wouldn't believe that kind of character would be such a big baby face, but in New Zealand, he's talking normally. There's no gimmick. He's just simply Mark Lewin, and he's a huge baby face,
And when was that about?
Oh, I'm guessing that's late 70s, early 80s.
Late 70s. Okay.
What was the name of the gimmick that Bob Roop did? Because he joined that group, didn't he?
Oh, he did.
Yeah, sort of face paint and half a shaved head.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to look it up.
To see Bob Roop, I first saw Bob Roop on. I was on about the late night television that we had over here. They kept changing promotions every now and again of what they showed. I suppose they were just sent a tape, and they put whatever tape they were sent on. So we had NWA, and then we had some ICW, and Bob Roop was on that. So to see Bob Roop, the wrestler, the sort of Olympic style wrestler, doing this crazy gimmick was mad.
I thought the Maya Singh one, that one.
Yeah, could have been. Yeah, could have.
Yeah.
Half shaved head he had, didn't he? And face paint.
Yep. Yeah, I remember seeing him. My first exposure to him, I think, was probably 86, 87 in Crockett, maybe. So,
right.
And he was in there, and I think that might have been his last run there. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that, but yeah. And I had a really good appreciation for him because, like you said, he was a very Olympic-based wrestler, and he was very, very good.
Yeah, very believable.
Yeah.
Probably because it was a real thing, so it's hard not to be believable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I first saw him on ICW, which, the Savoldi's one, which is another, we're talking about the territories. Most of the Southern, that sort of New York, New Jersey kind of thing that was going on there, was it?
Yeah, it was basically out of New England. Yeah.
When it comes to the Northern territories, obviously everybody loves the WWF as a kid.
Right.
But territory-wise, that was great for me. It's the first time I saw... I was already exposed to the WWF. I knew about the characters there. The ICW that was shown late at night was sort of reruns from maybe 4 or 5 years before. Right. So it was the first time I saw Buddy Rose without doing his blowaway diet on the WWF. First time I saw Dusty Wolf when he wasn't just in the ring doing jobs in 2 minutes. The bushwhackers as the sheep herders. The first time I'd seen them as because I was used to this, green outfit sort of camo sort of gear, and now they're busting people up, and sticking things in people's heads. It was like, whoa, yeah, totally opened my eyes to the world of wrestling. The other thing we had late at night was GWA, Global Wrestling Alliance, which I believe was Boris Malenko's in Florida.
Okay. Yep. I remember that now.
And Rusty Brooks and Jumbo Beretta.
Okay.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, I think you can find that on YouTube as well. I believe the IWA that you're talking about.
Not a great deal of it, but I've still got tapes of it that I taped at the time.
Yeah,
that I dig out every now and again and have a look at.
You still have a VCR to play?
Oh, I've got two just in case one breaks.
I have one in my garage. I'm not getting rid of it because there are times I do pick up lots of tapes. I go thrift shopping, so and I have boxes of VHS tapes, just not much wrestling left. I wish I had tons of tapes before I moved out of my parents' house, and they got rid of them after I moved out. So I had lots of stuff from the 80s, like AWA and World Class and all sorts of weird stuff, you know what I mean? Like independent stuff from the 80s. And it's kind of, I wish I took them with me when I moved from my parents' house, but
yeah,
there's tons of great stuff.
I could never lose my VHS player. So it was a second-hand, I can't remember where I got it from, but I made sure I've got two just in case one goes on the fritz and I need another one.
Right. So where else have you worked outside of your country besides the United States? Did you travel elsewhere?
Abroad, not really. I've been up to Scotland, going again in August. I was a regular in Wales. I've done a trip to Ireland, so I suppose that's overseas, isn't it, Ireland?
Yeah.
But I was looking the other day that there's only 2 counties in the United Kingdom in England that I've never wrestled in. So I've been about, I'm kind of like I was never a big name, but I was always busy.
Right.
I was always busy and I was always relatively reliable. And you tell me to be there, I'll be there. So no matter where it was. And I think I've only ever missed 3 shows in all my time, and that's one when I was very ill and in hospital, and I even wanted to check out of the hospital then and just wouldn't be there, but I was told strictly not to. And 2 because of car troubles, which is inevitable. It's going to happen when you do that many miles on the road, isn't it?
Yeah. I guess it's going to happen eventually. Yeah.
Especially when you buy cheap, shitty cars like I do.
I'm in the same boat, so that's why I go through them every few years. So, I was able to purchase my very first brand new car last year, so for the first time in my life. So I feel somewhat lucky. I've had to get very few repairs so far.
That's a big feat, yeah.
It's
a big commitment.
Yeah. It definitely is. So, let's see. What else you want to throw out there for now?
Yeah, anyone that wants to find me, have a look at HCW International Wrestling on Facebook. And after about 25 years of putting shows on, which is this June will be 25 years since the very first HCW show, I've never been prouder of the crew that we've got. There's been a lot of people wrestle through our doors, and I've never been prouder. And business has never been as good. I can't pinpoint exactly what it is or why they come any more now than they ever has, because it's the same venues and such. But yeah, business is really good, and we're sort of selling out on the whole. Like small venues, admittedly, but we're selling out, and the reviews are brilliant, and I'm really, really proud. I've never been prouder of the crew that I've got, and the mood is infectious. So when the mood in the dressing room is good, everybody does better, and there's no problems, there's no beef, there's no misery, there's no egos. It's like a bunch of friends being together, and sometimes the wrestling gets in the way of the dressing room banter. And And yeah, I've never been prouder of what we've got right now. So yeah, I'm really pleased with it. It took a lot of time and hard work because it's you had to separate the. We have had issues. There's always going to be issues along the way somewhere, but we have had problems and we have had people that cause upset and egomaniacs and all that, and we've filtered those through, and we've got an amazing crew now.
I know this is, you're talking about how business is really good for you guys, but how, as a whole, in the UK, was wrestling during the pandemic? Because I know that pretty much the whole world shut down and there was not a lot of wrestling.
Yeah, it stopped. The country kind of closed down. I think it was like March, April time. And the summer is kind of our best period. We do a lot of festivals and carnivals and that kind of thing.
Right.
So we lost the summer there, and then there was an opportunity for outdoor stuff, but it was too late by then. It was just kind of the latter end. So we managed to get 2 in that year, and then the Prime Minister shut us down again. So that was all we could do, was the 2 that 1 year, when we normally do, anywhere between 22 and 30 shows a year. We could only do, I think we did 1 early on in the year, but yeah, we managed about 3, 4 at the most that year. But then we did the 2 outdoor ones. He shut us down again. Everything was locked down. Everything was shut down. And then there was quite a big period then, and it was a very slow start. Once he did open us, it was limited capacity, sort of, the seats were spaced out and all the rest of it, very difficult. And business was slow. I think people were worried about going out. Venues that were good for us before, that are back good for us now, don't get me wrong. We haven't lost them altogether, but they picked up, but they were really poor. And it was a point where I thought, can we do this? Can we carry on? But luckily, we persevered with it and put it down to just the fact that it was just a bad period. And people were worried about going out, the scaremongery of what they put on the news. Just made people not want to go anywhere. And I kind of predicted it. I said it's either going to be one of those where once everything opens up, everyone will rush out because they can't wait to be out, and they'll do everything they possibly can, or they'll get used to the fact that they can actually stay in the house and have a nice time, and won't bother going out. And unfortunately, that was it for us. They said they're going to stay in the house. But that soon wore off, and we're back to being. It's never been better than it is now.
In the I don't want to say post-pandemic world, but we're still kind of recovering in a way. But it seems like everything is booming again because pretty much everybody was locked in the house for almost 3 years. So yeah. A lot of businesses improved because
it was a slow start, but we're making up for it now.
Yeah, and I remember the first show I went to. During the pandemic, when things were able to start running again, and it ended up being possibly one of the hottest crowds I've ever seen at an indie show ever. And it was just an amazing feeling that, there's this local company that nobody's been able to witness for almost a year, however many months to a year that things were shut down initially. In the first show, everybody was on fire. You know what I mean? It was the first time they were able to actually pack the room without having space seating and all that stuff to keep people away from each other. So it was quite awesome to tell you the truth. It was an awesome feeling to see something like that.
Yeah, it's. I suppose it was a release for people, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah.
They haven't had the opportunity to shout and scream around other people for quite a while, so they're going to let go.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I get your opinion on something before we bounce?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen the news that about WWE and the Endeavor company.
Mm.
Yeah. So, what's your opinion on that going forward? How do you feel about?
I don't know a lot about the Endeavor thing. Well, who they are. It's something to do with UFC, right?
Yeah, I guess it's the parent company of UFC, and I guess there's going to be a merger, and it's something like
right.
Yeah. Some sort of merger. Yeah.
I did read the word merger, which worried me a little bit because they're 2 very different entities, aren't they?
Yeah, I believe UFC
and WWE.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for both their sakes that neither of them try to be the other, because they're not at all the same. But together as two separate entities, but working together, I'm sure they could, pull out something. I just hope it's not the end of the WWE, or they try and change it in too much fashion. If you're going to buy a company like that seems to be doing all right at the moment, with everybody raving about WrestleMania, and Triple H seems to be doing a great job now, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
If they leave it be, they could probably be all right. Just leave it. Why change a winning formula? I mean, yeah. I'm not an expert on what they do now, but from reading what I do, people seem to be loving what it is at the moment, what's happening at the moment. So if I were them, I'd just leave it be, and then just change what you have to, not going with your own ideas.
My opinion, they're probably going to be two, like you said, two separate entities in a way. However, I would guess that they would use it to some sort of cross promotion in a way, and that possibly things are going to be taken off. I know the Peacock app will probably be done with, I'm guessing, and the network will probably be, I know internationally the network is available in the United States. It's on Peacock now, but I'm guessing that those two platforms will be gone, and then possibly move to ESPN Plus. That's a guess, and so which people would have to start buying the pay-per-views individually again, as far as opposed to paying the $5 or $10 a month to stream them as part of a package.
Well, we managed that way for many years, didn't we? So I don't see why we couldn't again. But there are so many pay-per-views now, though, it's going to cost a fortune.
Exactly.
When we used to do it, it was 4 a year.
Yeah, and I think that in American dollars, they were anywhere from, in the beginning they were like $25, and then every couple of years they raised them. And I think that last time I purchased a pay-per-view for WWE was probably like $50 or $60 for a show, and that's pretty much when I stopped doing that.
That's got to be $600 a year or thereabouts, right? It's quite a chunk, isn't it?
Yeah, just for something that I'm only somewhat interested in. That's a lot of money to be paying for, I think. So
yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So Johnny, I want to thank you for being a part of this show.
Pleasure.
Today.
Thanks for having me.
And we got to do this again sometime. So
we've always got something to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. Anything you want to promote? Anything? You're more than welcome to come on. And what is where can people find you and your company? You have a YouTube channel too, correct?
Yeah, anything that's HCW International Wrestling, just stick that in and you'll find us somewhere. But the international bit is quite important because there's so many HCW. There's quite a few HCWs. HCW doesn't actually stand for anything.
Okay.
I just wanted 2 initials, so I just picked those. Thanks to the people in Kentucky. It was Hardcore Championship Wrestling in Kentucky because that's what they did originally. But then when it became, because it was hardcore wrestling was a big thing during that period, and then they realised that it really wasn't a very good idea, so they just changed it to HW, and it's kind of stuck ever since. So we're just 3 initials rather than it meaning anything. A lot of people ask us what it means for, and I just make something up every time. It's been awesome. Like Hero Championship Wrestling, Historic Championship Wrestling, Heritage Championship Wrestling. Whatever I could think of. The first H I think of, I'm telling you, that's what it is.
Well, I want to say thank you once more for coming on, and I want to say thank you for everybody tuning in, and go check out Johnny on the social platforms.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wrestling fans, promoters, wrestlers, and anyone who enjoys pro wrestling now have something new to be excited about. The Wrestling Fans International Association, the WFIA, is back. WFIA is an association that exists to promote, grow, and support professional wrestling throughout the world. Membership is free. Your membership includes a free digital bi-monthly publication of the Wrestling Fan News newsletter, association updates, voting privileges, and much more. Please go to thewfia.org, that's THEWFIA.org, and become a member today.
Available on all streaming platforms. It's professional wrestling's greatest, largest, privately owned wrestling library. All the classic hits, flips, slams, and pins of yesteryear are on one place. It's Ultimate Classic Wrestling. Check out the Nature Boy Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, Mr. USA Tony Atlas, Tito Santana, Rick Martel, a who's who of professional wrestling's greatest spotlight stars ever to grace the squared circle, all in one place. Grab the best seat in the house for memories and mayhem on Ultimate Classic Wrestling.